Chairman, and Grover Norquist, President of Americans for Tax Reform. Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Grover, we need a good 30,000-foot view to start. What about this is reconciliation compliant?
Well, the whole thing is structured to be reconciliation compliant. That's why it took so long to put it together. This has been negotiated with the Senate as well, so there's a great deal of agreement already between where the House and Senate are, as well as being pre-negotiated with House members. So something very close to this is what will pass the House and the Senate. The top-line news is the Republicans just won the House and Senate in 2018. This is an amazingly pro-growth set of policies, and where we were told you could never see 3% growth again by the people who brought us 2% growth over the last 8 years. We're already at 3%. This will take us up to 4%. It's a very strong pro-growth, job-creating package.
Wait, 4% growth? That's what you're saying?
I think well, we're at 3% now for the last 6 months. I think you're looking at significant
that's a quarterly
increases
number.
in growth.
That's
Those
not
are the
an
last
annual
6
number.
months. No, annualized, the last 6 months.
So you're talking 4% growth, Austin. Is that realistic to you?
No, did he say 4? It's 40. 40% growth.
Better than 2, which is what we lived through.
Here's the problem. You know what the biggest problem for this tax plan is? No one's read it yet. And the worst thing that's about to happen to it is people are going to read what it actually says. Because what you're going to see is they're going to abolish the estate tax. So billionaires get a huge tax cut. And they're ending the deduction of interest on student loans. They're going to end the medical expense deduction. They're going to cap the mortgage interest deduction. They're going to cap the state and local tax deduction. A whole bunch of things that there are middle-class people who get tax credits or breaks now. There are going to be literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of middle-class taxpayers whose taxes go up so that we can cut taxes by a lot for the biggest corporations and the highest income people. That's not going to fly. And if you try to shove $5 trillion of cuts into a $1.5 trillion suitcase, it's not going to fit. And so that's where the rubber will hit the road.
Grover, especially on that point about state and local income tax, capping it at $10,000 for property taxes only, there's sure to be a lot of pushback to that. And what about all the Republicans in the high-tax states? There are at least 50 of them. Why would they be on board with something like that that would raise taxes on a very important demographic on both coasts?
No, actually, take a look at what this does. The most important thing it does is going to create jobs. You take that corporate rate down to 20% and allow us to be competitive in the world, which we have not been for too many years. We go to full and immediate business expensing for the next 5 years. Ask companies what that will do to make it easier for them to invest for job creation. The biggest winners of this is not whose taxes get cut how much, although that's very nice. Guy who didn't have a job for the last 2 years who's going to get a job. Your brother, your mother, your sister, all of the family members that can become employed who've been unemployed because the recovery we've been through has been one of the worst job-creating situations over the last 8 years that the country's seen. We need to create more jobs. Those are the winners. The jobs that get created, the businesses that get created. There are 30 million Subchapter S pass-through corporations. That's 30 million people, spouses, families that are going to see lower taxes. And yes, corrupt big city political machines will no longer have subsidies from other states to subsidize their very high property and income taxes, but the American people will see significant tax cuts. And they're doubling the standard deduction up to $24,000. It's a little hard for the left in playing the politics of envy to miss that point.
Austin,
well, they're getting rid of exemptions when they do that. So look, the thing is, Grover's argument comes from a place that says, if we have this trickle-down theory of how the economy works, then let's cut taxes for the biggest corporations and the highest income people, and that will, in a magic beanstalk kind of way, grow everyone's pie. But I just think something like 28% of the country thinks that we need to do tax cuts of the form they're proposing. And how are these Republican senators going to explain to their constituencies who say, wait a minute, my taxes are going up. I cannot deduct my mortgage interest. I can't deduct my state and local tax. I can't deduct the interest on student loans. And you're cutting the estate tax for billionaires. That's good for me. And Grover's going to tell them, yes, it is good for you. But I just think they're not going to think that's good for them.
And Grover, he's not even mentioned. Stocks at record high. We just had 2 quarters of double-digit corporate profit growth. Claims came in today at 229,000. I mean, how do you sell urgency on this?
Well, because there are too many people who don't have jobs. There are too many people who say that they have gotten out of the labor force because they've given up looking for work. We saw the labor force participation drop during the Obama years. People are getting out of the labor force, not because they're old. These are people 25 to 55. The reason why Hillary Clinton and Obama lost the election last year was they produced a lousy economy for much of the country. This is a job creation bill. They can play envy all they want, but at the end of the day, jobs will trump left-wing envy. And this will bring the jobs. The Democrats are scared because of what this will do in the 2018 election.
What makes you so sure that corporations face...
The Democrats are not scared.
I want to parse the 4% growth. Grover, the 4% growth. What makes you so sure that if you cut the corporate rate down to 20%, which many big corporations already pay rates in the 20s or even below that, and get this one-time repatriation rate, that it's actually going to translate into more jobs and higher wages, something that we haven't really seen at a time when corporations have been doing quite well?
We haven't seen it because, among other things, the marginal tax rate is 35%. What we're moving to is a 20% marginal tax rate. The European average is about 20%. China's at 25. We're at 35. Higher than China, higher than socialist China is not where you want to be. You add, it's not a one-time repatriation. We're going to a permanent territorial tax system, which all the economists told us we should have done about 50 years ago. But that will allow us to be much more competitive internationally. And we're going to full and immediate business expensing. This is what Kennedy moved towards in his. It's what Reagan moved towards in their bill in taking the long depreciation schedules and going to full business expensing. Taking the tax on estates, George McGovern played that politics of envy and carried one state with it. You can play it if you want, but the polls show people don't want to tax other people's lifetime earnings, which is what the death tax is. And it's not only bad economics, it kills jobs and destroys capital, but it's lousy politics. The Democrats are free to have that issue.
Go ahead, Austin. I see you making faces.
No, I'm not trying to make faces.
Smiling.
My point is very simple. I'm not talking about envy. I'm talking about how do you explain to a middle-class person why their taxes are going up while you're cutting taxes for someone else? I just think that's not logical. And the second is, look at Europe. Look at the lowest corporate tax rate in the world, in Uzbekistan. These are not places that are busting out the doors with growth. These are magic beanstalk beans that have been promised to us before, that when George W. Bush said, the very same people advocating it, let's cut these taxes for high-income people, for corporations, let's allow repatriation of money, and that will generate massive growth. It didn't work. We did this, and it does not work. And to do something that's going to be twice the size of the Obama stimulus, which the people condemned for increasing the deficit, I just think at a moment when the unemployment rate is as low as it is just ill-founded and not a good idea.
Finally, Grover, you know, when we're trying to draw analogs to the Reagan era, Bruce Bartlett was asked whether or not these cuts are in the fine tradition of Ronald Reagan. He said, that's just a lie, too. I know, because I the 81 cut. You agree?
No. What Reagan began to take the corporate rate down in '86, but the Democrats insisted on lengthening depreciation schedules. And that hurt the economy. So we're doing two things. We're taking the corporate rate down permanently, and we're going to full and immediate business expensing. And on the individual side, the good news is the Democrats can say anything they want, but this bill will be passed before Christmas, and the American people will be able to see